Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
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 Can you see the apocalyptic California sky behind me? Yeah.
What's going on? I literally thought that was a painting. Oh my gosh.
No, so it's basically the fire. It's the particulates from the fires in California, but it's like the smoke and everything is high up and high enough up in the atmosphere that it doesn't smell smoky outside, but it's created this weird filter. So it's super dark outside. It's 10 a.m., but it's super dark and it's like orange. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's a little freaky. Yeah. Okay. Still got some folks hopping in, so we'll just give it another minute. Great. All right. So, oh, Joe, I see you typing away in here. I was going to say, like, if we can kick it off with a couple of updates from the solo crew on, we've got some progress happening within Glue on the open source side. So wanted to have, if we have some of the Glue team here, they can give a little update on what's in the open source betas right now. And then Service Mesh Hub, we had 0.7.2 go out last week. And so, Joe, if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then we can get to additional things added in by the community. So, Joe, you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. I can speak to that 0.7.2 release. We're now up to 0.7.4 following a couple of more fixes. But if you do download the latest Service Mesh Hub, you'll find that we now have support for Open Service Mesh, the new Service Mesh project led by Microsoft. And that just kind of continues the story of Service Mesh Hub, providing a way to configure any service mesh that you bring to it. Next up, we're targeting app mesh support, But again, if you install Service Mesh Hub 0.7.2 or later, you will find that you are now able to configure, discover, etc., your local installation of Open Service Mesh. So yeah, please give that a spin. Let us know what you think, and feel free to file any issues or reach out on Slack with any questions or additional feature requests.
And can you mention a little bit about kind of like what's next that we're working on within there that people can expect?
Absolutely, yeah. On the Open Service Mesh front, that project is fairly young, so the support that we have isn't like super robust in terms of the like API that is provided by Service Mesh Hub. Like the features that are available on OSM are a subset for now. It's largely based, since their API is largely based on the SMI spec and API there. But as features are added on that front, we will do our best to keep up with the state of the art for OSM. Beyond that, on Service Mesh Hub, our main focus has been adding app mesh support to our existing Service Mesh Hub controller to allow app mesh to app mesh communication and configuration through our API. We can get into some technical details if you think now is the time, Betty. Scott's here; he's been kind of leading our effort, or we could move along to the next topic.
Oh, we can add a little color there, and then we can see, I'm just scrolling actually through the Service Mesh Hub channel in the community to see if there's any kind of maybe a question that has come up recently that we just want to share out here in this call. But Scott, if you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up, that'd be great. Give a little more detail.
Sure. Let me just So let's see, for app mesh, we've gone with a few constraints that were not there before. Basically, we're building on top of the app mesh controller for EKS, which is basically the recommended way of using app mesh with Kubernetes today. And so there's just a number of extension points for Service Mesh Hub that we're currently implementing, basically to support as many of the features that we can on app mesh, which means you'll be able to use the same API, the same semantics that you're already familiar with Service Mesh Hub to control app mesh. It's particularly nice because app mesh has a bit of a complex workflow in order to achieve some of the simple use cases like traffic shifts. And we will, yeah, I mean, if anyone's interested in the internals of Service Mesh Hub and how things are actually working internally, we can get into that. But from a high level, essentially what it means is we'll be able to integrate into, you'll be able to install Service Mesh Hub, register a cluster that's running on EKS, and we will be able to detect that app mesh has been integrated into that cluster and then assume control of it as well as monitoring it and so on. And we'll be able to do some, yeah.
2 weeks back, I think Harvey was mentioning there were some decision points around how you can control that or how you're handling the IAM interface, for lack of a better word. Is that all settled out, or is there still some?
Yeah, so we are going to be deferring that behavior to the app mesh controller. So what you'll do is you have an EKS cluster that's running. You install the app mesh controller there as a part of the workflow for setting up the cluster. The app mesh controller will handle interacting with the API, which means all IAM just can be handled in the standard fashion.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah.
Service Mesh Hub, you'll be able to still run it from anywhere. You can run it from any cloud provider. And it's the only requirement is that it'll be able to write CRDs to that cluster, which is the same requirement that we currently have with Istio today.
Okay. I guess part of the reason I was asking that is, I mean, we'll talk about this with the limited trust and some of the identity issues that come up. So I was wondering what you might have decided there. And it sounds like you were able to get around it for the API access, but I wonder when we come around to identity between app mesh and Istio or whatever, we might get right back to that same problem, in a way.
They really come down to separate problems, but definitely by integrating with the recommended tooling. That's like kind of the official AppMesh documented means of integrating EKS with AppMesh. Will provide native ways of integrating with the IM on various platforms. And like we've discussed in the past, limited trust will allow us to map trust across domains through Service Mesh Hub.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So that's it for my update.
Cool, thanks. If there's no additional questions, could have someone from the Glue team talk about some of the enhancements we've been making on the Glue open source side? And if there's any kind of like issue, outstanding issues or requests that we want to discuss on this call.
Sure, yeah. So I can talk to some of the changes coming in Glue. So it's harder to summarize because we have it's a lot more smaller, different requests or feature work touching a lot of different parts of Glue, but it's in terms of like long, big story, not as much for 1.5. But some of the things you can expect in 1.5 includes like exposing the gRPC to JSON transcoding filter kind of raw from Envoy. We did some improvements to the route table delegation model, so you can have more powerful selectors and you can use more different kinds of route table matchers in your delegation models. We're currently in the process of reworking and should have, by the time of the release, improvements to the rate limit API that allows you to handle wildcarding, more generically. We support for AWS STLS credentials, simple session token service. And this is just kind of giving an idea, like those are the kinds of things we've been working on. But in terms of, big story picture, I think Glue Federation and multi-cluster is kind of the bigger push there. I could speak to that for a bit. Joe would also be a good person to talk about that if we had follow-up questions. Happy to go into depth on any of those if you want to talk about them further. If you have any questions or things you want to raise, that now would be a great time to do so.
I would be interested in what you're doing with the Federation, or if you have pointers to some of the documentation, maybe that's fine. We can look at it offline. Just put them in the meeting notes if that's the case, and then we can follow up offline.
Yeah, let me try to dig that up. We have some stuff written down. Give me a second, and I should drop it in there.
That's fine. If you have it written down, just put it in the notes, and we can move on. We'll look at it offline.
Cool. Actually, when we have anything on I only listed Service Mesh Hub and Glue in the projects here, but I think if there's anyone else from the solo side, if there's something to share on some of our open source, didn't list everything, so.
Are we talking about Dev Portal here, or it's not? I don't believe it's open source.
Yeah, this is community, so I think we should keep it open source because then it's something that folks can contribute into as well. But we do have a dev portal for folks who are using Glue and or Istio. We do have a dev portal, but that is in the enterprise version. So we could discuss if people have interest or questions here, but I think it's it's not the same as on purely open source side.
Sure. I will say that I've noticed an uptick in some of the community contributions, at least in Glue. And one of the other ones that I was really excited about is the community took it upon themselves to help Glue build on ARM64 architectures, which has been great for running it in like Raspberry Pis and stuff like that. So just one more thing we can look forward to in 1.5. And we appreciate all the contributions that we're getting. It's been fantastic.
Oh, that's a good point. We should actually ask them to join the next call to just talk about it. That'd be fun. Okay, then let's see here. There's a question here on the discuss the limited trust implementation options. So I don't know who added that. John, was that you?
There was a combination of Daniel and I, more or less.
Okay.
I typed it in the meeting notes, if that to be precise.
Yeah, so it's
but
related
Daniel-
to issue 910. So yeah, is Daniel
Yeah.
on?
Yeah, Daniel's on. He's been doing a lot of the work. He's actually gotten some prototypes up and working, but we're not really in a position to show it today. The other one, Mihai, has been on holiday for a little bit, so kind of slowing us down a little bit. But anyway, I think that the main point that we wanted to get to is a couple macro points. One is that there's a couple different ways you can do this, obviously, how, whether you do something like even Christian pointed to in the issue with Istio, where you have trust bundle all the way from workload to workload, or if you do something with gateways, as Daniel put together, or even something that within your current documentation with respect to limited trust. And it's mostly about how you want to manage their certificates and how they're rooted and stuff like that. So I don't know if there's strong opinions here in the group. I think my opinion is that we probably want to have some ability to support multiple modes, even not necessarily out of the gate, but over time. And the other, so that's one aspect of, do we want to go to a specific sort of model of how we do this or not, if there's any strong opinions. And then the second is that with respect to this, we're going to need some way to manage the credentials that need, since they're not commonly rooted, there's going to be some API implications of how that credential information gets around, and the exact credential information will depend a little bit on the model. So being a little fuzzy here on the exact details. Mostly it's just to collect input as to whether there's strong opinions one way or the other for either of these topics before we just get a design together, probably in time for the next community meeting. So I don't know, Betty, if you want to just share the issue. I did, between Daniel, Mihai, and I, we kind of at least enumerate some of the implementation models that are currently listed. Christian kind of roughly pointed to Istio. That's sort of the trust bundle model. Then Mihai had an original architecture. Daniel added something a little more specific on using gateways. And then I just referenced the currently documented model that's in Service Mesh Hub documentation.
So I don't think in general there's going to be a lot of strong opinions, but I would, the one that I would have is that, to your point about supporting multiple different types, that the APIs that we build are generic enough, or not generic, but like they account for the fact that that there will be multiple different identity models in the different meshes that we use. So just as long as the API and the code and Service Mesh Hub accounts for that, then what are the actual implementations for limited trust? So those can be varied.
Yeah, that makes sense. So should we try to propose some API thoughts around supporting those multiple options?
I think that's useful, yeah.
Yeah, because I know API changes can always be a challenging area, so I wanted to just make sure that that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So Daniel, do you want to add anything? Are there any specific questions you had for the group here or any clarity that you think might be helpful as we work through those API and implementation details?
Yeah, so basically today I wrote a comment here in the issue describing a potential implementation. Here I have a drawing, and it's basically just referring to Istio. Basically, this draft is actually pretty simple, just having Istio secure gateway with the TLS type mutual enabled, and from the other side, workloads will be configured with destination rules of type mutual as well, and they will they'll basically have a reference to their certificates and to the other cluster, to other certificate authorities that it should trust. So this model, I think it's something might be called cross-signing or something like that. So, but I'm not sure. Yeah. So here in the issue, you can see the details clearly. Also, I wrote a bit of code that basically shows that this will work, but it's still just a sketch.
Okay, we can take a look.
Okay, so based on your input, Christian, we'll try to just come out with something a little more concrete next week with respect to API and maybe a sketch of implementation for at least one of the methods, and we can iterate on that. I guess we'll enter it as you post it as a PR to the design doc folder. Is that what people suggest, or just add it to the issue? Is there a preferred approach?
In general, we have these kinds of discussions on the issue. We don't have like a design doc process fleshed out. In either event, like if you circulate the issue or if you choose to do it in a PR format, we can still get eyes on it and discuss it in this venue as well.
Okay. Okay, great, thanks.
Cool. Let me double check here if we have other. I think, oops. All right, any other comments or questions or proposals, things folks want to add? It's kind of all the stuff that we had listed in advance for this week's meeting. All good? If so, then we will see you next time. And yeah, we'll probably have a few more things to talk about as we get closer to the end of September and we start getting ready to ship out, get Make 1.5, also ship it versus having all the bits been in beta.
Yeah, and we can probably add some topics about WebAssembly to the next meeting.
Yeah, yeah. So I will start the agenda portion for the meeting on the 23rd, and we'll see everyone there.
Sounds good.
Just a question on the WebAssembly. Is that, are you treating that as part of the Service Mesh Hub project itself, or is that sort of in context of a different project?
So, John, one thing we were doing with this bi-weekly meeting is instead of creating separate forums for each project, what we've done is just bring all the discussions of all the other projects into this as a standing community meeting. And we've been doing work with WebAssembly for, WebAssembly for Envoy and kind of, the things that are built with Envoy like Istio and Glue. And so it's kind of in parallel, but, they can be used together. So we're just bringing that into this discussion.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's kind of what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Cool.
I have one question. Sorry to bring it up so late.
No worries.
I know Harvey mentioned a good point in the Slack channel yesterday where I was basically having some trouble getting the right API to work, and he mentioned that some label shouldn't be there, and I found it to be useful. Although we had some alternate strategies, I found out that there is no documentation on this. So do you think it's useful to add a developer documentation who might use your API? So they might at least be aware of all these gotchas. Or do you want a PR for that?
Yeah, a PR. I mean, it sounds useful. A PR for that kind of doc would be great, especially as you go through it and find more.
Yeah, do you plan to list the developer docs in the normal place, or do you want to basically have it somewhere else? I'm just wondering where's the best place to start.
I think in some of our other projects, or generally, I guess, even projects outside of the ones that we have, that sort of, this is for developers coming and contributing and so forth. I would think that would be in just like a markdown file in the repo. Doesn't have to be in the user doc.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it may be easiest to at least have an, as a starting point, just put it as a markdown in the repo, and
yeah,
over time it might become more sophisticated and evolved and move, but at least having the information somewhere is the best starting point.
Sure.
Sorry I'm late today, but I will also add that if you have any docs, because you're coming from outside, a lot of the stuff that we document, maybe, we kind of know that, so maybe we messed it up and didn't document it well. It would be great if you will be able to request any docs. If you feel that something is missing, that we didn't cover that at all, or something like that. Mainly because you have a fresh start and we already opinion, we already know. So could be that we're missing something, or something sounds very, reasonable to us, or clear to us when it's actually not. So it would be very useful. Okay.
Yeah, I think we've seen some little things along the way. We'll try to be more proactive and even fixing things that are little. It's not really that much work to throw a PR together for some of these things.
Fantastic. That would be huge.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Cool. So any other questions? Any other last comments? All right. If not, then we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.